Hello there, Jim Burns here, broker of record for Windermere Homes and Estates, sharing with you the updates to the RPA in December of 2015. And if you recall, we've already discussed the changes to the residential listing agreement, and today we're going to be speaking about the residential purchase agreement. And it's very interesting because they are tied together. And here's how they're tied together. There's almost like a quiet seismic shift going on right now in the way we're doing our real estate and representing our buyers especially. And here's what's happened. In a hot market, prices going up, especially in certain parts of the state, such as the Bay Area, where it's routine to have multiple offers, where buyers are jockeying against each other, trying to make their offer the offer to win the property. So many buyers are choosing to remove their contingencies up front. And what's happened is it's created a lot of confusion and a lot of liability for you and me. So we're going to go over the RPA in the order on the pages of the RPA, but when we get to paragraph 14C, you're going to see a fairly significant change that relates back to paragraph 7C of the residential listing agreement. So enough talking, let's take a look. Really, the first item of any note in the RPA is actually a little bit subtle. It's paragraph 4, which talks about the sale of the buyer's property. And if you check that box, of course, form COP, the contingency for sale of buyer's property, will populate. And the change on that is eco-friendly because they're saving us paper. If you notice at the very bottom of that page, there's a brand new area which says notice to remove contingencies. It's a notice from the seller, like a notice to perform, telling the buyer that they have to remove that contingency. So it's a way of saving us from having to use the notice to buyer to perform and have it be all on one sheet. Not a big change, but I thought I would point that out. Another change, this one may be even a little bit more subtle, we get to paragraph 12A, and as you know, that talks about the buyer's inspection of the property and matters affecting the property. So here's what was happening. In the revised 2014 contract, the RPA, in which we did away with the WPA, wording was added letting the buyers know that they could get a wood-destroying pest and organism inspection. Okay? However, it was unclear to some buyers whether that was a separate inspection from the physical inspection. So now in paragraph 12A, subparagraph 1 and subparagraph 2, it's spelled out more clearly that they are separate inspections. And now roll the drums please, because we're going to get to paragraph 14, which has 14C but also 14B5, and we're going to kind of talk about it. I think that B5 should have gone after 14C, and here's why. So you're sitting with your buyer and you're thinking about removing the contingencies when you write the offer. Well, what contingencies are you going to remove? So if you choose to check that box, you're going to have form CR, the contingency removal form, come, and the contingency removal form is going to show you what contingencies you're going to remove, and we're going to get to that in a moment. But I want to also point out the wording here in 14C. Take a look at the very end where it says buyer is acting against the advice of the broker. Okay? So when we make a non-contingent offer, what are we doing? Right? We're putting the buyer's deposit at risk. So we want to make sure that there's wording in there saying, hey, you're acting against our advice. So, as I've mentioned how the RPA and the RLA are interconnected, for a moment let's go back and take a look at the residential listing agreement and take a look at how this is being handled from the seller's side. So if you go to paragraph 7C of the residential listing agreement, you're going to see something brand new, and it says investigations and reports, and the seller agrees within 5 days of the date of this listing to pay for the following pre-sale reports. And this box is in there for physical inspection, termite inspection. So this is a conversation that you're now having with your seller. What are the benefits and disadvantages of having these inspections up front? Well, relating to paragraph 14C of the residential purchase agreement, if your seller is willing to get an inspection report up front, that makes it a lot more likely that the buyer is going to be able to remove the inspection contingency up front. Is that a good thing? Interestingly, CAR did an informal poll of agents asking the following questions. Would you like to see your sellers get pre-purchase inspections, yes or no? And 77% of the CAR respondents said yes, they would like to see inspection reports. So it's kind of like a seismic shift, because I bet that not many of us have had inspection reports done up front. So that is the RLA driving the ability for a buyer on the RPA to check the box on 14C. So important, I want you to understand from the listing standpoint that if you're going to be providing a buyer with copies of reports, it's my recommendation that you do it using one of my favorite risk management forms, CAR form RFR, Receipt for Reports. So what we want to be able to do if we're on the listing side representing a seller and providing these reports is to say, hey, these reports are not guaranteed by us, you should get your own reports. And the way you do that is by checking paragraph L on the receipt for reports. Why? Good wording on here. Let me read it to you. The following reports obtained by or prepared for the seller prior to acceptance, so that's important. And then in bold print, these reports should not be considered a substitute for obtaining your own inspections and reports covering the same items and any other matter affecting the value and desirability of the property. Okay? So what's that all about? What we're saying is we're providing you the reports, so you should probably get your own, but we don't guarantee it. So once again, it's putting the buyer on notice, it's protecting our seller, and it's protecting us as the agent. So receipt for reports, good thing to have. So now, going back to the RPA, which is what this video is all about, I've explained to you the mechanisms behind the scene driving these changes in the RPA. So paragraph 14, buyer removes the contingencies specified in the attached contingency removal, CR, which we'll look at in a minute. And then this is great. If the buyer removes any contingency without the adequate understanding of the property's condition or the buyer's ability to purchase, buyer is acting against the advice of the broker. Once again, we like that. We like to have that in there. So if you then take a look at Form CR, you'll notice that there's been some slight modifications of the CR in order to accommodate this change, whereas paragraph 2, 4, and 5 are kind of separating all buyer inspections other than the physical inspection and buyer's physical inspection. Now, an interesting question comes up. If a buyer has removed their contingency regarding the condition of the property, does the buyer give up their right to actually go on the property and do an inspection? It's kind of a quandary. So what the Standard Forms Committee did, and they thought this through pretty well, is they added paragraph 14B5 in the RPA, which says, access to the property. Buyer shall have access to the property to conduct inspections and investigations for a default 17 days after acceptance. Now listen to this. Whether or not any part of the buyer's inspection contingency has been waived or removed. Okay? So even if the buyer has waived or removed their contingency, they still have the right to go on the property. Whew. Okay, so that really is giving us a path by which we can do a riskier transaction, having the buyer remove their contingencies and still protect the buyer and protect the seller. Finally, the very last minor change in the RPA is at the very bottom, the end of the form, page 10 of 10, is an initial spot for the buyers. The buyers acknowledge that page 10 is a part of the agreement because we want to make sure the buyer has seen the entire agreement. So that's the update on the RPA done in December of 2015. It's been my pleasure to share this with you. Go out and have a great transaction. Please remember that the opinions here are just my opinions. You should check with your broker and find out how your broker would like you to interpret these forms and fill them out. Other than that, I wish you success in your real estate endeavors.